Welcome back, everybody, to this video episode of Rooted in Rising. I'm your host, Dr. Carmela Maxell, and today's conversation is one I believe every person needs to hear because trauma doesn't simply affect our thoughts, it affects our bodies, our relationships, our nervous systems, and often the way we move through the world. Joining me today is Dee Mosley, author, speaker, wellness advocate, whose work,
Hello.
yes, hello. And her work centers around healing, restoration, and helping others reclaim themselves after trauma. Dee, thank you so much for being with us here today. I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Dr. Carmela, for having me. I appreciate who knew that the West Coast would meet the East Coast on
West
Rooted and
Coast.
Rising.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
love it. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about being here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you would, please tell everybody what state are you hailing from?
Hailing from Georgia.
Yeah.
Yes, about 45 minutes south of Atlanta.
Okay.
Or
All
as we
right.
say, Atlanta. But
Atlanta.
I am originally from neighboring state of Alabama. But yes, I'm a country girl through and through.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I've told my audience before, so my father was from Georgia.
Yes,
Yeah, so
I love
I
it.
got some southern roots, and then I lived on the
The only way to go.
yes, yes. Certainly there's so much rich culture and just amazing, so many amazing people in the
Yes.
South.
Yes, I
Um,
love it.
I love
We
this so
we
much.
just had our family reunion. Everyone is dispersed all over the
Yeah.
country, but there is nothing and no place like home to come back home to the country. So we just came off of a 4-day family reunion, and everyone is exhausted.
Wow. I
Yeah.
hear that. I hear that. Got that good sunshine, that good food, all of
Yes,
that.
all of it, all of it.
I
Yeah.
hear that. Well, once
Mhm.
again, welcome. Tell us a
Thank
little
you.
bit about your journey and what inspired your healing work and what led you to writing a book.
Oh wow. Okay, so for years, I won't say that this whole idea popped in my head of, oh, I'm gonna write a book.
Right.
It didn't start out that way. But for years I did what so many women do. I worked, I served, I took care of everybody.
Hmm.
I just kept pushing. And from the outside looking in, I looked like I was, all put together. But inside, I was slowly, kind of falling apart.
Hmm.
And eventually my body said,
We're done.
yeah, we're done. I
We're
don't know about
done.
you, but if you're not done, I'm done.
Hmm.
And that's when my healing journey began, which basically led to writing a book about it. But the healing journey began when my body started letting me know that it was not going to go any further than I had pushed it, really for, I want to say the culminating part of it was for 3 years. My body
Hmm.
was trying to say, hey, 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 hey,
Hmm.
stop right here. Until it just eventually my world seemed to just fall apart and crash around me.
Hmm.
Um, and in doing so, in that season of my life, I began to write things down because at some point I began to say, hey, I need to be trying to get to the doctor because
Hmm.
whatever's going on is not, it's unrelenting. It's not
Hmm.
stopping. So
Hmm.
I need to begin to pay attention. So that led to a series of doctor's appointments and things of that nature, which led to me trying to remember what I needed to tell the doctors when I got
Hmm.
there. So I
Hmm.
started writing things down and journaling things. And at some point during the process of all of that, um, I just felt the need. I'll say on the other side of the process of healing.
Hmm.
Um, if I can be honest, I feel like I heard God say, "You need to put this in a book
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
other people need to hear
Yeah.
um, read, hear, and understand that you were going through what they are afraid to vocalize and what
Mm-hmm.
they're afraid to face themselves. They're, for the folk who are where I was
Mm-hmm.
in not being ready to commit to saying, I need to take care of myself. So that's where the inspiration came from. Just crashing out.
Yeah.
Was the start of the inspiration. So yeah.
I love this. I love that you're bringing this to light. One, the first thing I can think of, right, as a mental health clinician, I think of, oh man, we push our bodies so far,
We
and
do.
if we just take a second to honor our body and express gratitude for
Mm,
our bodies and what we put our bodies through. I know I am definitely one that
yeah.
is constantly striving to figure out ways to take care of myself better, especially as a mother, as a mental health
Mhm.
professional, all the different hats that I serve. I feel like sometimes we live a little more recklessly than we
Yes.
probably should, right? And like, oh,
Yes.
we're just stay
Yes.
up an extra hour, do this, push ourselves really hard because of societal demands and
And that was
family
me.
demands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was me. That was
But
me.
but I think what's also so beautiful about what you just said is, God spoke to you in this way, and you're helping people with a putting a language, putting
Mhm.
vocabulary to the experience, just so to know that they're not alone. And I know
Yes.
in mental health, I hear these things all the time, right? Like they may not say, oh, hey, I've pushed myself too far.
Mhm.
They may
Mhm.
say, you know what, my body is just tanking. As you say, I'm crashing
Absolutely.
out. I'm,
Absolutely.
I can't sleep, I can't eat, or I'm eating too much, I'm sleeping too much.
Mhm.
And our body gives us signs, and we're
That we're not listening to.
not listening to. We're not
Yeah.
listening
Yeah.
to.
And for so many of us, like I believe you just made reference to giving language to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so many of us don't know how to give language to it, because I know this from my own lived experiences, because I did not know
Mm-hmm.
how to give language to what I was going through at the time. And it was I was on a learning curve while in the middle of my storm.
Yeah.
Because before we understand where we are, we get, oh, I don't feel well. Let me go to the doctor. Let me
Mm-hmm.
go to my primary care physician, so that they can give me something like a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're dealing with something chronic,
Yeah.
first of all, at the onset, you don't know that it's going to be chronic. But
Sure.
at some point in the middle of that, you're learning, okay, I need to learn and how to advocate for myself. I need
Right.
to learn the language, even in my minute layman
Mm-hmm.
terms. I need to understand so that I can help the professional help me, because there's only so
Right.
much that they can do. So even if a person picks up Grace and Glow
Mm-hmm.
or talk to a Dee Mosley, just to listen to what I can offer them, it helps them absolutely begin to find their own language
Yeah.
on their own journey.
Yeah, and truth be told, right? When you talked about like the chronicity of things, right? We oftentimes don't know if something is going to start off as chronic. I know I did not
Exactly.
believe that
Hmm.
the pain that my body was in when I was dealing with chronic pain, before I had a surgery. I didn't know it was going to be chronic, right? I
Right.
thought this was just a minor inconvenience
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
if I just
Yeah.
like had a little more coffee or just like
Right. Right.
spent some
Right.
time in the sun, maybe that would
Right.
help. And
Hmm.
interestingly enough, for our audience, much of the time, what we're dealing with and where our bodies start to fail us a bit, it's never singular, right? It's usually this complex web of
Oh,
things all coming
goodness.
together. It's not just, oh,
Yes.
I'm getting frequent headaches. I'm getting frequent
Yes.
headaches and I'm light sensitive, but
And
I also
this.
can't
And
eat
this.
and I'm dizzy and this and this and this, right?
Exactly. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that is where I was. It was like a domino. of it. At first you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking it's this.
Right.
And then when you go to this specific doctor with this specific thing, and they're checking all the, they're going down the rabbit hole, and there may be some issue with whatever you think that specific thing is. And then they're like, okay, I've gone as far as I can go.
Right.
It's not necessarily what you think it may be, or it may be this, but it may be connected to something else. So then you go on
Right.
your merry way because they've done all they can do. And then you're wondering what else is what's happening. So you're going
Yeah.
from doctor to doctor, different specialties, and yeah, it's never one specific thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
never like a one. I'll be better in a couple of weeks. For me, it went from a month to 2 months to 2 years to 3 years, and then when you get into learning what is actually going on, and you tie the emotions and the mental and the physiology and all of these things together, and you begin to understand how it all works, you start to think about, well, this really didn't start 2 years ago. This really didn't start 3 years ago. This started 40 years ago.
Right.
So
Right.
and then there's this whole thing in dealing with that, and the healing goes to a deeper level in dealing with what happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
to make sure and understand that your healing needs to become full circle. In order to
Right.
do that, there has to be some accountability and
Mm.
facing yourself, and pulling things from the back of your mind to know that all these things have to they tie in together in
Mm-hmm.
order, if
Mm-hmm.
you're on a true healing journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I can't wait until we deeper dive into this. And and
Yeah.
and this particular episode, we're not just talking about these physical and and psychological and physiological effects of trauma, but
Mm,
we also want to zoom in on our Black women, our women of color,
absolutely.
because I think uh, the ways in which these body aches and pains and things show up can look quite a bit different for women
Yes.
of color, and
Yes.
also in terms of time frames, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they don't hit in the same ways. The responsibilities look, feel, and are experienced very differently. But before we get into that, we dive into that, let's talk about um, trauma and just like
Mm,
beyond mental health. So a lot of people think that trauma only affects your mental health, but
right.
like Bessel van der Kolk has talked about, the body keeps a score, right? Our bodies often
Absolutely.
remember
Yeah,
what our
I said
minds are
that.
trying to
Mm-hmm.
forget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so for you, your experience and maybe what you've written, and we'll make sure the audience gets to hear about your book. What
Yes.
happens in the body after someone has experienced trauma, whether they recognize it as trauma, right? Because that's a
Right.
caveat. Like, because
Right.
sometimes we don't recognize, oh, that's that thing that affected
Yes.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made reference to Grace and Glow, and absolutely, I talk about that. I touch on, because obviously I am not a doctor, but I reference everything from my own lived experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll answer it from my experience. Trauma for me, I would say that trauma doesn't, like, if you get hit, right, it may leave a bruise.
Right.
But when we talk about trauma that affects us internally, you're and that affects the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't leave a bruise, right?
Yeah, and people don't see it. Those invisible,
Mhm.
it's that the invisible scars of trauma, and that's hard.
Yeah,
That's hard
yeah,
to
yeah,
identify.
yeah, yeah. Because with the nervous system, when the nervous system is dealing with trauma and traumatic experiences, what happens, and what I had to learn was, or maybe I'm sure I learned it somewhere along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm almost 53, and I think about that whole fight or flight thing
Yes, yes.
phenomenon.
Hmm.
And when you're on constant high alert, that's what trauma looks like to the nervous system. That's
Hmm.
the best way that I can explain it. And once I began to learn from, my doctors and my physical therapist, I began to understand that my body has been in constant fight or flight.
Yeah.
It's been on this whole constant roller coaster, or I can even say it's been stuck, right? It's
Hmm.
been stuck in high alert.
Hmm.
And that is where a lot of my issues, physically, um, came from in understanding. Once I understood that my body has been in high alert, my nervous system was stuck in fight or flight. This is why, my blood pressure, I went from a person who had really low blood pressure most of my life to a person who every time I went to the doctor, they're telling me that my blood pressure is sky high,
Mm.
and that I'm, I had stroke level numbers because my body was, beginning to be in this whole I'm about to blow a gasket,
Yeah. Yeah.
mode. So that's what trauma can do. That's what trauma can do.
I've when working with clients and even teaching, some of my students, having conversations with friends, oftentimes what I have used as a visual reference, right, is imagine you're on an airplane, and
Woo.
we hope we hope to get to our destination safely. We pray on
Safely.
that one, right? But can
Mm-hmm.
you imagine if the airplane takes off in the sky and then barely touches down on the tarmac and then just picks back up again and then
Yeah.
just
You're like,
tries to land
well,
and it
what is
picks back up again, and so
exactly?
you never land, right? You never get to that place, and then you imagine. For me, I get irritated being in cramped spaces for way too long. I don't
Oh,
think that
one,
there's
right?
anyone that enjoys that,
Exactly.
right?
Right. Right.
Especially when you're sitting back in, like, I call it tuna can class, where you back there,
Right.
you're not in first
Where
class.
I am all the time.
Right where I am all the time, right? Like, I can't stretch my legs, and then they tell you to
Right.
remain seated, and then it gets hot, and then
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
person's complaining, and so that visual of the plane never landing, and then what happens after time, we realize we may or may not land, so then we start adapting, we start that survival mentality. So
There you go.
tell me
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
survival, and the exhaustion that maybe we feel or don't feel or talk about or don't talk about, right? So that plane just touch, go, touch, go, touch, go.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
that look like? What was that like for
For
you?
me, what that looked like for me, honestly, and had no clue until, like I said, until my body started sending like these 911 signals.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about that extensively on other interviews,
Mm-hmm.
how survival mode is definitely, and I feel like that is something for that most, if not all, Black women experience. Is
Mm-hmm.
survival mode is something that we begin to know as familiar, because we
Mm-hmm.
don't know any other way, because
Mm-hmm.
we're taking care of, trying to raise our children best
Everybody.
we can, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to raise everybody, exactly,
Mm-hmm.
trying to take care of everybody. If you're married, or if you have a spouse, or if you're in a relationship, you're managing an entire household with children, with spouses, or significant others. You're trying to
Right.
manage your bills. You're working a full-time job and trying to be an entrepreneur.
Writing
All
a
of the
book, running a
writing
podcast, all
books,
these
running
things.
all of the things,
Yeah.
being chef, being doctor, being all of that. And most of us are trying to do that from a place of scarcity,
Mm-hmm.
because let's be honest,
Mm-hmm.
culturally we're behind the eight ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're Black women, so we're behind the eight ball that's behind the eight ball, within a place, where we're on the bottom of the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
Mm-hmm.
doing what we can, everything that we can with what we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what survival mode looks like. So when you're talking about peace, you don't really understand what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're presented with it, it can actually feel uncomfortable because
Very.
you're not familiar with it. You're familiar with surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
I've worked with individuals in the carceral system, and one of the most scary uh, things that I've heard from many people who were released from like jail or prison, and you start to see the recidivism and these individuals just returning back to these places, is because um, all this opportunity and things out there, that dream, right, the American dream that we talk about,
Very,
is
that part.
not necessarily as attainable and as easy to attain as I think
Hmm.
maybe we market it, or we have marketed it in the past. And so it's easier to come back into a structured environment that doesn't help us grow necessarily, doesn't provide
Right.
us that. And I'll go out on a limb and get your thoughts on this one, but I think too, um, not a criticism per se, but maybe more like a commentary on like the Black community and Black women. I think this is sort of two pronged, right? So we can be really good at building each other up and community and taking
Mm.
care of one another. At the same token, our community is very much historically tied to the church. Our beliefs in God
Right.
and our faith have carried us for so long, and at the same time, we oftentimes refuse some
Yeah,
of the
say it.
things that,
Yeah.
like going to the doctor consistently, seeing
Yes.
a therapist, all these things that are meant to help support.
Hmm.
But I also say I understand the
Oh,
caution,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We do, all of that, everything that you just said, we are our own, the only thing that we feel safe out of everything that you just talked about is church,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where we've been taught to
Mm-hmm.
find our refuge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the same side of the coin, we've been taught from history, from
Mm-hmm.
what history has taught us, or from what has been passed down from our ancestors, from what history has taught them. We're leery and we're cautious, and we're, for lack of a better word, we're, we have these superstitions about doctors,
Yeah.
and therapy,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been told that we shouldn't have to go to, if you feel like you need to talk to somebody, go to the church and talk to your pastor,
Mm-hmm.
or
And
we
we don't put
don't.
our business out there. Like that's,
Right, we don't,
yeah,
what goes on in this house stays in
stays
this
in this
house.
house. Mm-hmm.
Right, right, right. Or, we're untrusting of doctors. So all of those things play huge factors in how we take care of ourselves, or
Mm-hmm.
lack thereof.
Right.
At the end of the day, we pay for those things, because we wait until the very, we wait until those alarms begin to go off, until we just can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Or we don't want to admit that, I don't want to be the one to say, I see a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my church family to know that, instead of sitting down with my pastor, I went to sit down to talk to a therapist. Or,
Right.
I don't want my family to think that I'm dying, or, or something's going on with me that I can't explain. And I be the whispers, in the family group chats or whatever. So there are a lot of phobias, for lack of
Yes.
a better word, that we have in our communities, to our detriment.
Yes, and I firmly believe, as this is my profession, and I definitely didn't take this lightly in ensuring that I could be a part of the fold in terms of representation, right? Because we still don't have enough representation in terms of
We
mental
don't.
health for Black communities and people of color. But I think faith is a wonderful thing, and
Yes.
I think,
And
right,
yes.
and we have services and we have ways to sort of change our thinking and reshape the ways in which we navigate society. And there are people that do look like us. They may be far and few, but there are people that look like us, and I think it can really be good in terms of that. What keeps coming back into my mind is breaking those chains of transgenerational trauma, because outside of something that maybe we experience on an individual level, there are studies that show that in our communities, a lot of that trauma that we inherited, a lot of the pains that we inherited, right, are going unhealed, because we're like, well, I didn't necessarily face blatant racism and I or this, so I don't necessarily need to worry about that. I'm like, yeah, but your mentality and how you go about the world,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. The you may not necessarily have faced it, but being a part of a culture or community, you have to at least want to understand where we are and why we think the way that we do, or we have to understand that because we're in the same cultural family, that we don't, just because we may look the same and identify as the same, we're not all the same. And we have to be okay with that. And I really believe for us, and I can only speak for the Black community, that is also a part of our issue. Is because we want to put everyone in the same box, and that's a stressor as well, especially for Black women.
Not living up to whatever fold.
Exactly.
I know I have personal experience with that. I've my Blackness has been challenged and things like that.
Exactly.
And I think that divisiveness also, and I spoke about this in another episode, but that divisiveness also contributes to, like, we incite some of our own trauma.
Absolutely right.
And so I think it's just, these are pain points that we really need to zoom into.
It's exhausting. It can be very exhausting.
Yes.
Especially, and I won't say especially as women, for Black men also, because like you just said, our Blackness, we challenge one another on a regular basis, and I'm not sure where that comes from. And there is so much trauma within the Black community.
Yes. Yes.
And we don't know how to channel that. We don't know how to heal from that. We don't know how to deal with it. So in turn, we turn it on one another.
Yes. And I think this was a part of the historical master plan.
That part too.
Kind of like keep us fighting, keep us with the infighting. And then we can't grow, and we've got to get smarter about it. We got to get healed about this. And
we have to.
You talked about exhaustion, and when I think about mental health and behavioral health, I see these clouds and sort of categories of things, and then this conversation about just trauma in general. No matter what part of, like, the socioeconomic chain you are on, your gender, whether you're, like, I'm biracial, so that's a whole other, we've got other stuff going on with that one. But let's talk about that exhaustion, because exhaustion,
surviving it's exhausting.
But what is exhaustion? What did exhaustion look like from the perspective of what you experienced? Because I'll say for me, I tend to, when I present, I'll be hyper exhausted, and I will do more, and that's my exhaustion.
Yeah. You're either going to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. And like me, I think I was one of those people who was all over the place on one end, and then I'd find myself on the other end. We talked about a little bit about brain rot before started.
Yeah.
That was where exhaustion would take me a lot of times. I would be like this overly performative person,
Yeah.
which is most Black women. I would go into go mode to
Mm-hmm.
perform and do all the things,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I came off of that, I would find myself
Just
somewhere sitting, yeah, just leaving everything and doing this whole brain rot thing. But on the other side of that, if you imagine maybe like you're in a car and you're driving all day, with your foot on the gas, and never letting up,
mm-hmm.
you're there. You at some point, a few things are going to happen if you don't ever break. Your foot is going to get tired. It's going to cramp up. Those muscles are going to, say, "Hey, what's happening here?"
Mm-hmm.
The car is going to run out of gas.
Mm-hmm. If you don't hit
Or
something first.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Or it's going to blow a gasket.
Yeah.
So that's what survival looks like. Eventually giving out.
Mm-hmm.
And back to the nervous system, kind of works the same way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what is so interesting, and I think I give so much credit to the body, even though this is not where we want to be. Our nervous system learns so much from what we do that it gets
Right.
faster at like
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, so this thing happened last time, I was too slow, I got to keep going, I got to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and we get trained inadvertently, right, indirectly, to respond to certain things um,
Absolutely.
that are not necessarily crises, or under respond to things that are
Mm-hmm.
crises. um,
Right.
and I will tell you, for me, I would go and go and go and go and go and go, and I was a lot like you described yourself, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
um, and and I want to say to the audience, there's nothing wrong with being a high performer. There's nothing wrong
Right.
with,
Right. Right.
but you have to be situated in a healthy space, right? So you can do a
That,
ton of
that's it.
things.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
If it's not coming from a healthy space,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the time, if you are not aware,
Mm-hmm.
that you're not in a healthy space to understand what your body is doing, whether it's overcompensating for you and you're, subconsciously, and you're not aware of that, once you begin to experience all these things, emotionally and physically, you are going to you're going to flip out.
Yeah.
You're wondering what's happening, because you don't understand what the body is trying to do, which really, at the end of the day, your body is trying to protect itself and
Yes.
protect you. But if you're not aware of how all these things work, it can be really, really scary.
And I was having a conversation with someone the other day. Um, uh, we sort of wear this as a badge of honor, and at the same time,
Mm,
we know better, right? We know better, but we talk about, the work ethic now. Like, we used to, we'd have the flu,
yeah,
we get up
yeah.
and we would go to work the next
And
day
trudge
anyway,
on.
trudge
Yes,
on, and
yes.
part of me is like, we did that though, right? We actually
Yeah,
did
we
that.
did.
We did
We
that.
did the doggone thing. We
Yeah,
absolutely did. Because that's all we knew.
that's all we
That's all
knew.
we knew. That's all we knew to do. And to our to applaud us, it worked.
Hmm.
But to what end though?
Yeah.
And when do we begin to ask ourselves, how we can begin to communicate healthier habits to our children that are now, either becoming adults or young adults? Where do we turn this into something that's healthy for them, so that they can understand that you don't have to suffer
Yeah.
to become these successful people?
Yeah. You know what, as we're talking about women of color, and specifically Black women, um, there's this sort of pit in my stomach feeling, because I recall reading
Mm,
something about how Black women don't need a break because they're the strong ones. That we don't burn out.
Yeah. Right.
And everything in me was like, oh, I just want to fight.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Like we
But
have on this superwoman cape all the time.
right. And no, we are
Right. Yeah.
people
No.
too. We are
Yes.
women. We need love. We
Yes.
need support. We need
Yes.
care. We need a soft landing. We need
That's what
all
I
of
was
those
about
things.
to say.
Yes.
We need, and we want to be vulnerable. We want to be soft.
Mm-hmm.
We want, like you say, we want these soft places to land. But when there's a different expectation, we don't have a place where we can let our guard down.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so difficult, and it's hurtful,
Mm-hmm.
because we're teaching our daughters,
Mm-hmm.
that you can't let your guard down. You can't get caught slipping, and we're on the other side of that, we're teaching our sons, you have to make sure you find a strong Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our sons are opting for other women instead of us, because for them, it's like, oh, you're too strong. So you don't know where that balance is, or it can be confusing. It's
Yes.
confusing all the way around.
I think too, we talked about, because, I have a daughter and I have two sons, and they have seen me
Mm-hmm.
on the spectrum of sort of like the morally injurious and then burnout circle, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
outside of teaching our children uh how to move in the world,
Right.
I think the greatest disservice, though, that we do outside of our homes and our immediate communities is we teach society
Mm.
to expect from us
To
that
be
we don't
strong.
need rest. But
Yeah.
and I don't even want to dabble with the word strong, because I think that I think Black women are just inherently strong,
Inherent.
right?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but we teach society that
Mm-hmm.
that strength for us equates to burning out and not showing it, and that
Mm-hmm.
is maddening.
It is. It is. It is so. And I'm just thinking about a time when I was in the corporate world, and I could not show any other emotion other than having it all together and being,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'll use the word high performative.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I came into the office and if they could sense any inkling of, emotion from personal things, there was a problem.
There was a problem.
Yeah, what's going on with Dee? She shouldn't be, she shouldn't be showing emotion,
She's angry.
or well, or she's angry. If I came into work with the to do my job, and not, small talk, or rushing over to somebody else's cubicle to talk about the weekend, it was an issue if all I did was come in to do the job that they were paying me for.
Right.
And it was that within itself was exhausting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because as a Black woman, we, again, this goes back to we're taught to not have folk in our business. So you don't necessarily, go to these outside places, especially, God forbid, work, to
Mm-hmm.
talk about whatever you may be going through personally. But other cultures may not feel the same way. So, they see it as an issue or a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
I especially in the workplace, I've experienced this in different work settings, and I'm a person that uh, I speak my mind,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
which doesn't always
Doesn't
land me
always
well.
bode over. Yeah.
Right, doesn't always bode over well, but I think I speak my truth and I live in my truth, and I've had it where it's, I've been called,
Mm.
so
Mhm.
you trying to act like you're tough. I'm like, no,
Right.
or
Mm-hmm.
you're not
Mm-hmm.
that, or you're
Mm-hmm.
this, or you turn around and so you're too aggressive, and you're what
That word.
you're
Yeah.
you're contributing to people's, fear about you, or toxic workplace culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so what do? We get to that point where we shut down. And then I know for me
Yeah. Yeah.
personally, I'd feel it in the pit of my stomach. I would stop eating. I would just be really angry, and I'd stew about it.
Yes.
And it would show up. It would show up, and sometimes not in the time that
And
I
the-
thought, or in the
yeah.
place that I thought. And
Yeah. Oh gosh, projection.
oh
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You bring things home from work. That was me a lot of the time. It would get projected onto either, and I hate to say it, either onto my children, my husband, or or it would show up in ways where I would isolate from my community or my friends. So again, it's just that perpetual cycle that would absolutely at the end of the day cause exhaustion, so you're kind of just deflating in more ways than one.
Yeah. 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 And we could talk about, even just after some time, you know uh for me, I was not a person that called out a lot, because I always believed in
Right.
holding on to my sick days in case, especially as a mother and single mother, and holding on
For
to
your
that time
children.
for your
Hmm.
kids. But
Yeah.
I found after some time, if I didn't get my stuff together, or if I was ignoring a part of me, um, I was using sick days. I
Exactly.
And then I was feeling guilty about using those sick days, and then I perpetuated this terrible cycle, and it just kept going, right? And then I was like,
Home.
okay,
Mhm.
24 hours,
Spiraling.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I just got to get some sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about sleep.
Oh, let's talk about sleep. And what, for everyone has asked me, say, how are you doing all this? I'm like, I don't sleep. I mean,
I don't sleep.
yeah,
Right. Hmm.
it's farcical, it is, but at the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
time, the quality.
The
Ugh.
quality of sleep, like you can be in bed, saying, telling yourself, oh, I'm going to get 5 hours of sleep or 7 hours of sleep, and you may be even taking something to help you sleep,
Mhm.
melatonin or whatever, but at the end of the day, your nervous system is still going, because we go back to getting stuck in you're in that fight or flight mode, because your nervous system doesn't know what to do with everything that you're throwing at it. So sleep doesn't look like this relaxed state.
Mhm.
I'm still, I'm on the other side of a lot of things
Yeah.
that I've been dealing with, but my body, that part of what the healing process is, I'm still learning
Mhm.
how to get through.
Yeah.
It's not easy once you've been in this mode for years.
Mhm.
It's not easy to it's not a quick fix.
No.
um, but the bigger, the great part of it is you understand that, okay, I'm here, so you know how to begin to work through that, which
Yeah.
includes learning how to rest.
Yeah. And I've had to redefine rest, because
Mhm. I
growing
like.
up, yeah, because I don't think rest looks the same for everybody, and nor should it, right?
Right.
And I'm very conscious of that as a clinician, that when I'm talking to people, and when people are having conversations with me, they're like, you know what, you're doing too much. You need to rest. And I'm like, okay, hold on. But if I'm doing quality
Right.
things, right? Like if I'm doing quality
That's a
things that bring me
beautiful truth.
joy,
Hmm.
yeah, there's like
Hmm.
a lot of inherent criticism when you are a high performer and a go-getter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like I'm doing multiple things, but they
Hmm.
all bring me joy, and I'm managing the time really
Yeah.
well, versus you do that one thing, and it's
Mhm.
causing the biggest amount of stress. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we got
Yeah.
to prioritize here.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I would get that a lot. I would get that a lot. Like,
Mm,
oh yeah, you, and I still get that.
you're
Like,
doing the
yeah,
most.
you were doing the most. You really were doing too. Especially now that the book is out.
Uh-huh.
I hear a lot of folks saying, yeah, you were really doing too much, and you really needed to, you needed all the things. But like you just said, rest can absolutely look, and it should look absolutely different for everyone. So even though, I was going through this journey of understanding that my body was sending me all these signals,
Mhm.
it wasn't necessarily telling me that I was doing too much. I believe that my body was telling me that I need you to pay attention to what is going on internally, not per se that you are doing the most,
Mhm.
just because what my life and my performance looks like to someone else, it may be something completely different from what you think you should be doing and the level
Correct.
of where you are in your capacity, because my
Correct.
capacity and your capacity could be they are completely different things. So I don't want people to misinterpret, especially high performative people, that because you're doing all of these things, if it brings, like you said, brings you joy,
Mhm.
if it is taking care of your household,
Mhm.
if it is taking you to a place where your purpose is ultimately supposed to be, then yes, absolutely, you very well should be doing those
It's
things.
restorative.
Right,
Yeah.
but from a healthy place. And if you're feeling like you're not in a healthy place, then that is where the balance is, and that's where you need to learn how to do that and find that balance for you and your physiological makeup, if
And
that makes sense.
it makes total sense. And, and I want to kind of dabble into two things about doing the most, right? So, on the
Hmm.
one hand, I think, and maybe I feel this too, Black women get the short end of the stick, and we are often the ones told that we're doing too much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I look at other content creators that are not Black, or who are
Right.
non-women of color,
Hmm.
and why are they
Yeah.
not being told the same thing?
Right. Because we're all on the same level as far as trying to create content or meet the standard of what content creation looks like. And some of our other cultures are doing way more than we are, but they're not being told that they're doing the most.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good question. One to say, let's,
Think about that
yeah,
for a second, right? Like,
right.
yeah. It's for women in general.
Mm,
Just throwing all women, identifying, women presenting. Um, why do you think women in general feel guilty resting, and why do we as women in general normalize being in survival
mm.
mode?
Okay, so rest for me was a foreign thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, just because, just from a lot of the things that we were just talking about. I understand now that my mind never had an opportunity to learn how to rest. And it grew from a place of childhood. And I really believe that it goes back to understanding that, or thinking that there's a certain level that I need to get to
Hmm.
as a young Black woman, and then as a mature Black woman who has reached certain levels in life that include children,
Hmm.
that include your career, that includes being matriarchal in the community,
Yeah.
a pillar in the community, in this person of strength or this person of a certain stature, that has a standard from other people to look up to and to strive for, and you feel like you're what is the word that I'm looking for? You're, for lack of a better word, you've become the standard,
Oh,
and
you're like the
yeah,
token. You're
yeah,
responsible for,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
you're for the entire family, for
yeah.
the entire community.
You got
So
voluntold.
that part, I like, yeah, voluntold to be the person.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, it's exhausting to be the person. And then when you when you become when you vocalize that you no longer want to be the person,
Oh,
you're not
oh,
heard.
hold
You're not
on.
heard.
Oh, they will fight with you. What do you
You're
mean
not
you giving
heard.
up? What do you mean?
Yes, like yeah, I didn't hear you say that you don't feel well. You can scream it from the rooftops. You can say it subtly. But yeah, if you've been the person for so many years, you're going to be that person
Mm-hmm.
until your last breath, even if it's, to your detriment.
Yep.
And I really feel like,
We got to
some,
stop that. We got to
yeah,
stop it.
yeah.
Uh,
A lot of some part of Grace and Glow came from that place as well.
mhm.
Um, because I'm like, okay, people are not hearing me.
They're not
They're
hearing themselves.
yeah, exactly. Like, do you hear yourself? Saying, yeah, but after I've said to you, I'm no longer doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm retired from this. Um, get somebody else to do it. And then to turn around and hear somebody say, yeah, but you could do that for me, right? But I just told you, no, no. So rest is a foreign thing for women of color, for Black women, for so many reasons. Because so many people don't want to hear us say no. So
Mm-hmm.
we forget, or we abandon our own health and our own restfulness because we don't want to disappoint, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody saying, yeah, sure, you can do it. You're
Oh, when they
person.
build you up and they mark it for you and they put you on this platform. And it's
Yes,
like,
yes.
yes, I can absolutely do that. I also
Hmm,
need
hmm.
time and resources and sleep
Yeah,
and
yes, yes.
to
It's
attend
like,
to myself.
however, but
Yeah. And
hmm.
and then nobody asked me. I think that's the biggest thing. Nobody asked me if I wanted to do this. Like we just showed up and we showed
Yeah.
out, right?
And then you feel guilty,
Hmm.
to even want to rest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because we've been taught that productivity is a thing. We've been taught that productivity equals worth
Hmm.
in our communities, even in our families. Even if you get both sides of the coin, like we just said, either we're being built up because we keep going and going and going, or you're doing the most because we keep going and going and going. So there's this whole,
You can't
well,
win.
tug of war. You cannot win. And there's no rest in that. There's
There
no
is no
rest in
rest in
that.
that. There's
Yeah,
absolutely no rest in that. And
yeah.
I think just, women in general, we'll include like white women, Black women, Spanish women, Asian women. We throw all them in the mix. I mean, the tides have turned a little bit, and so
A
women
tiny
are.
bit.
Yeah, I say this, in terms of work, we got female bosses out here, right? We got people,
Absolutely right.
we
Doing the
got
dog
some,
thing.
yeah,
Yes.
we got
Hmm.
female representation. It's definitely not where I'd like to see it.
Right.
And at the
Hmm.
same time, I think just in general for women, we normalize survival because we are still in a very patriarchal society.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't know. I mean, there was Kamala Harris.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So,
And Hillary Clinton. And I mean,
and
like,
Hillary. Hmm.
regardless of how people felt about
Shirley
either
Chisholm.
candidate, Shirley
Yes.
Chisholm, like regardless of how people felt about them, they came up. But look at the levels of exhaustion, especially Shirley
Mm,
Chisholm, right? Like, I mean, the fight that she
absolutely.
fought,
Right.
um, just there's so much
And
cost.
there was so much cost, and it was not just from folk outside of our community. It was the whole spectrum. It was everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still there today. Like you just said, we live in a very patriarchal society, and you just have to wonder, when will that? Yes, we're complete bosses, totally.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this ceiling that it continues to be chipped away at, and however, at what cost?
Right,
At what
right.
cost?
So, what are some of the myths about strength? We talked about Black women being seen as
Yes.
strong, as if maybe we have higher pain tolerances and stuff. But for women in general, what are some of the myths about strength that keep women stuck in this mentality and keep our nervous systems firing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that the biggest lie that kind of covers everything is that we have to do it all.
Mhm. I'm being called out. I'm being called
Yes, that's
out.
the truth. And we
Yeah.
begin to tell ourselves that, but that is the biggest lie, because no, you don't.
Mhm.
You do not have to do it all. Um, that keeps us stuck.
Mhm.
And that we have like this, for whatever reason, one of the biggest myths is that we have like this higher tolerance level
Mhm.
of pain
Mhm.
from everyone else, and I don't know where that comes from, or why it has followed us into 2026. But that's a myth as well. We cannot do it all, even though we're told that we can, even though we tell ourselves that we can, and we're just as human as the next person. Our tolerance level, even though everybody has their own different levels of tolerances of pain, our bodies are still, we're not invincible.
No.
So those are some myths that are out there.
Yeah. And I want to dabble into uh, that myth of you know, Black women in particular and women of color, that
Mm-hmm.
we have just this super strength and super tolerance for
Mm-hmm.
pain. Now, I think we've got a lot of superpowers. I think we do withstand pains that other groups don't.
Yeah,
You know.
I absolutely believe that. I believe in the bloodline of
Yeah.
our ancestors,
Mhm.
and I believe, completely, absolutely believe, that we get a strength that comes from them, through um, learned experiences, through, if you're of age, kind of, like me, or even wherever you are, whatever your age is, and you've grown up with grandparents, and you
Yeah.
remember seeing them work at the level of whatever they had to work to make it. Those things, you learn those things through osmosis. You learn those things by take on a level of strength by watching them, or remembering who they were. Yeah, and we absolutely have, and I take pride in knowing that we have that strength. Um, yeah, those things come from our roots.
Yeah. Our
Um,
communities.
yeah, our
Yeah.
communities. That is absolutely a part of who we are, but it's not to be taken advantage of.
Hmm. Hmm.
And at the same time, is not to be taken for granted either, to the degree that it's to our detriment. I know I've been using that word a lot, to
That
be
is true.
detrimental. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, we have to put it all into perspective. We have to learn how to balance it, because if we don't, we end up crashing out,
Yeah.
or we end up being defined,
Hmm.
misinterpreted, that
Hmm.
oh, that just because they're built to be strong, or just because they present to be strong, and we may very well be, and we are, but that doesn't mean that we don't get tired. That doesn't mean that
Right.
we don't deserve to rest. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that we should be taken advantage of, certainly, and it doesn't mean that our health doesn't decline if we
Mm-hmm.
don't take care of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we don't suffer trauma
Mm-hmm.
just because we are strong people. It doesn't mean any of that, and
Yeah.
it is it's unfair to be deemed that if just because we're strong people.
Yeah. And I think with that, going back full circle, it doesn't mean that we don't have nervous systems that also need to be
They
reset.
need to heal, or
They need to
yeah, to
heal,
reset. Yeah.
right?
Because, just because we come from different cultures does
Mhm.
not mean that our all of our bodies have the same. We may have different DNA, we may have different cultures, but the body is the body.
Mhm.
And it definitely needs to reset from places that where we've become stuck, especially with our
Yeah.
nervous system. So yeah, we have to give ourselves the opportunity to do so,
And
or
it
advocate for ourselves when other
mhm.
when folks think that we're okay when we're obviously not.
Mhm. I think about generational wealth, and we're talking about
Mm,
finances, right? And leaving behind a
I like
legacy
that.
for
Yeah.
for our children, for our families. Unfortunately, I think the biggest inheritance that we got, and this is not to say this is the only inheritance we got,
Hmm.
but as Black women, as women of color, the biggest inheritance we got were wounds that we didn't choose.
Woo, my goodness. That part, wounds that we did not choose. I don't even know where to go with that. That hit me hard. Um, and I'll go to something a little personal, in even in saying that. I can remember hearing my mom talking to my daughter about some things that happened to her in her past
Mhm.
that she was never able to articulate with me.
Yeah.
But I was the person who um, felt the brunt of that, I should say,
Yes.
whether indirectly or directly. Even with her not being able to express that with me, there was a projection from those experiences that she had that landed on me, even passively, that shaped who I was. And that could be a whole nother
Episode.
topic of
Oh.
discussion, but just to hear her express some things to my daughter that, and I'm like, okay, now that makes sense. Now I
Yeah.
understand why that came from there. But then how do I process it is where I am now, because
Mhm.
now I understand why she was where she was, which in turn put me in a position to be where I am. And then you go back into the whole physiology of why my body,
Why is it
decided.
turning on me?
Yeah.
Oh,
That subtitle. There you go. Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So well, I don't want this all to be doomsday, and I know you don't because you have
Right.
focused so much on your healing as I have. Um,
Hmm.
I think that can the body heal? Yes, I think with time,
Absolutely.
effort, energy, community.
Absolutely.
We also got to be mindful of what community looks like, feels like, smells like,
Mhm.
tastes like.
That
No,
part.
we
Hmm.
because we also can be part of communities within our own communities that
Yes.
continue to incite
Subconscious.
that trauma,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the body absolutely can heal itself. Can it heal itself perfectly?
I don't
That
know.
I don't think so. That remains to be seen. But absolutely, and it definitely, we have to give language to understanding that it does not happen overnight. We have to unlearn that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that came from witch doctors, snake oil, all of those things,
All the
but
things.
there's no magic pill, and we have to. That's one of the biggest things we need to understand, that there's no overnight um, healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a journey, and it is a process, and that within itself. is what has helped me the most, is to understand the language of there is a process in the healing, advocating for oneself, and then understanding that the process is a journey. And it may be, 10 years from now, but at least you're on a healing journey that you understand. That's where I am. That's what I am experiencing. And to also, this is a big one that we have to understand with healing. Healing begins with, I've used the word acknowledgement, but it also begins with being honest with ourselves.
Being honest.
We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to admit those things that we may have done to ourselves that were not healthy. Or
my best friend calls that the self-inflicted wounds that we place upon ourselves.
Absolutely. That we want to forget about, that we've swept under the rug, that we're ashamed of. But we have to face those things, even if not with anyone else, with ourselves, so that, because the answer lies therein, and if you cannot be honest with yourself, how do you expect to, for you and your body to meet in the same place to begin that healing journey?
Yes. So last question before I give you the floor about your book, because we got to hear about this book and where to get it and all of that.
Yes.
We talked about a lot of stuff today, right? We talked about, seeking out therapy, keeping your faith, making sure you have community, being honest with yourself, advocating for yourself. Go to the damn doctor, y'all.
Please do.
Go to the doctor, y'all.
Absolutely. Please,
Go
the doctor. Yeah. The therapist, all of those things. Yeah.
Stay out of the ER. Stop being high. Don't be a high utilizer in the ER. Just go get your preventative checkups.
Well. Yes.
Woo!
Yes.
Practice healthy habits across the way. But if you could give anyone that's listening right now that one starter piece, that one action step, where they're like, listen, okay, Dee, that's great. You done said a whole lot of things, but I don't know how to start. Where do I start? What's the one thing, even if it's small? What is that one thing?
Again, I can only say, just be honest with yourself. Honesty is where it all begins. The journey to healing begins with you being honest with yourself. Look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, my body is not doing these things for no reason. What can I look back on? What have I been ignoring? You can't do anything else. You can't, you can't find rest. You can't begin to even talk to someone. You can't even begin to pray until you are willing to take the first step to be honest with yourself. Slow down. Begin to understand that being able to communicate with myself means slowing down long enough to hear my own thoughts. Just all of those things. Like I said, healing is not a big giant leap, right? It's a lot of small steps, but you have to start somewhere. That one small step begins with honesty, and then you take another small step to all of the other things, but begin there. Just be honest with yourself. Be accountable to you.
Be honest with yourself, folks. I think that is a wonderful piece of advice, and I think that is a great place to start. Look yourself in the mirror. I think that's what I've always had to do.
Look at the person in the mirror, because at the end of the day, that person is the person that you have to live with. And if you can't live with yourself, then how can you expect anyone else to? Live with it. Be honest with yourself enough to be able to find healing, to be able to find peace, to be able to find rest, because until then, you won't be able to find any of those things.
Right. So let's get into it. I'm excited about this. Tell us about your book. And you talked a bit about what inspired you to write it, but who is it written for? Where can people get it? how can people connect with you if they want to get you on their podcast or seek some advice and
Thank you, thank you, thank
yes,
you.
tell us all of it.
So Grace and Glow was written again. I'll go back to saying that Grace and Glow was written from a place of me just communicating with myself and trying to get all these things out to be able to give language to where I was, where I am, where, you know, to help the doctors help me. But at the end of the day, what I'm beginning to understand and realize as people are reading Grace and Glow, they're like, wow, you know, I expected to, you know, read this tell all about Dee Mosley, you know, and as I'm reading your story, I am absolutely seeing myself in the pages of Grace and Glow. So it absolutely has become this place of refuge for folks to begin to say, hey, if Dee could do this, if she could be as transparent as she's been to the whole world, then I absolutely can at least try to be transparent enough with myself to face a lot of things that I need to face within me. So Grace and Glow is written for the person who picks it up and finds themselves in the pages. So I absolutely hope that your audience will go to Amazon
Yes.
and look for Grace and Glow under Dee Mosley. And there you will find it. Again, this wasn't anything planned. There's no marketing strategy behind Grace. So it's saying that there's no, you know, there's no website or anything of that nature. But if you're looking for me, you can absolutely find me on social media, Facebook specifically under Dee Mosley, Mosley.
All right.
And if you have any questions, you know, just hit me in the DMs, as the young folks say.
Yes, well, I'm going to help my sister out, and Grace and Glow and information about Dee Mosley is going to be available on my website, http://carmelamaxell.com. That information will be up, and as well as a direct Amazon link to her book. Pick it up, get a copy, y'all. Support our girl. Yes,
Thank
support
you.
our girl. Absolutely.
This has been amazing.
This has been so much fun. I just always have so much fun doing this.
Yes.
And thank you for being here with us today and
Thank you for
sharing your
having me.
story.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Yes.
Absolutely. For those of you, if today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to follow, subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with anybody who may need to hear it. Every conversation has the potential to change a life. And together we're building a community rooted in healing, growth, resilience, and becoming. Until next time, stay rooted in who you are and keep rising into who you're becoming. Take care.